My name is Aaron Lee Yeager. I am an author. I'm a video game aficionado. And at night I wear a cape and cowl and I fight crime. What I think a healthy, well-contained community.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way I would define it is you have a community that works together to help each other succeed in the game. And hopefully we'll talk about how to make that occur. But that is my personal definition. It's not whether or not people are having. You don't want people to have fun at other people's expense. You want the fun to be cooperative in nature. You want the fun to come from, I help you succeed and you help me succeed. And at the end of the day, we have both gone up one rung in the ladder. That's my definition.
Okay, awesome.
Cool. My name is William L. Munn. I am a writer of tabletop games. I write for Gallant Knight Games and also for Adept Icarus, which doesn't have anything published yet. But, so,
Up and coming.
I love video games. But that's not my shtick, right? I'm all about tabletop games. So tabletop gaming communities, right? If we get a chance to talk about that,
I was wanting to talk about both.
Definitely talk about
we're good.
Please do.
but also, yeah.
You should be on the board game panel.
Well, I'm not on the board game panel, but I am on the GM panel.
Yes, we're on that together.
And I'm on the crowdfunding panel because.
Okay.
Thank you. Because I have a game on Kickstarter right now called Zorro, the role-playing game.
Nice.
All right.
I do not play Zorro, and I do not play Bioshock. Please do not beat me up. Please welcome me anyway.
Yes, Shannen, you violent beater upper over there.
This actually would be the only time when I would condone violence, but I won't.
But because in the name of creating a welcoming gaming community, we will refrain from
Right, not in front of yourself.
Yes, thank you. That would be humiliating.
Actually.
She would never look at me the same. I'm Stan Crowe, and I do not write video games, but I have been playing video games since I was, 6, 7, so that's been probably longer than some of you have been alive. So I've been in a variety of gaming communities, way back to when the internet really started to become a thing in the mid-90s, late 90s. And I am a novelist. I've got 6 novels and 2 anthologies to my name. I've written, of all things, romantic comedies. I've written murder mysteries. I've written sci-fi. I'm currently working on a couple different ones. I've got a middle grade fantasy that I'm working on, as well as a spin-off novel from one of my romantic comedies. This one's not quite as funny, but it involves a 3,000-year-old displaced emperor who is trying to reunite with a reincarnated princess. So, yeah, lots of fun things in the works. It is actually pretty cool, and I think human sacrifice might have been in there somewhere, but it's still in the works. So,
Just some light human sacrifice.
yeah, just
Casual.
Yeah.
just losing a few limbs. They don't actually die. But so that's me.
I'm Shannen Camp. I write a lot of stuff, like young adult fiction and dystopian and paranormal and books about gamers. I've got one called Pwned, should you want to look it up.
Nice.
And I'm also a writer for svg.com, which is a gaming website, and I stream on sometimes Twitch, but mostly on like YouTube and stuff. Persephone Plasmids is my name. That doesn't mean anything to you because you don't play Bioshock.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's fine. I'm okay with it. I need to be better about. We're on the welcoming. I think something that makes the gaming community welcoming is not being not doing the like real gamer thing where it's like, oh, you like to explore more. That's not a real gamer. Like, oh, you only do PvP, because like I don't do PvP most of the time because it gives me too much anxiety. But I really am like I'm like a map completionist, and I really love like the storylines and things. So like I'm terrible at first-person shooters except Bioshock, because if you can light someone on fire and then shoot them, I'm fine with that.
Or murder them with crows.
Yeah, if I can shoot crows out of my hand, I'm good. But yeah, I think like the whole labeling people as not real gamers is not helpful to anything, really.
If I can answer that
Yes,
question
please
because I
do.
forgot, a welcoming gaming community starts with Fluttershy.
Did you say Fluttershy?
Yes, I did say Fluttershy.
Okay, I'm
So-
on board.
No, I'm into this.
But no, I'm on board with what everyone was saying about people collaborating to help each other. I also think that that's especially great when you can get some cooperative creativity. One of the best gaming communities I was ever in, there was a huge degree of creativity. It got to the point where I was more about doing fanfic and fan art than it was about actually playing the game. But that ended up being my community, and as much fun as the game was, the community ended up being more enjoyable. So
Wait, what game was it?
it was a browser-based game called Fuse Kids, like way back, and not many people heard of it. It had like about 7,000 people by the time it was done. And there was no plasmid first one. And there was no
I like
Fluttershy.
all games. I just am unhealthily obsessed with
No, it's
Fluttershy.
fine. It was a small browser-based game. It was still fun.
That is awesome.
So about a welcoming game community. So my perspective again is going to be probably a little bit different because most of the gaming that my groups do are at a table with other people in person. And one of the things that can be, I think, the most difficult to deal with when you're talking about face-to-face gaming with other people that you don't, like, sometimes you'll see it in video games for sure, but is not having a set of rules or boundaries or something that, like a social contract where everybody is going to say, we're going to adhere to this, because if we don't, then things break down and people get angry at each other and then they, right?
Rage quit.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Or just say they're too busy to come back next time.
Right,
Without actually telling you the problem.
right.
Not that that's happened to me in a D&D situation.
Clearly.
Oh, right. Thank you for those definitions. I definitely agree. I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily perfect or like everybody agreeing all the time, but civility and what I call low sodium.
Yes, I like
You all
that.
know how much salt some games contain naturally. You gotta find those people who like to keep it on the low. And clear enforced rules, I think, is a really important part.
Yeah.
And moving into that, I'm really curious to know if you guys, and clearly some of you do, especially in tabletop gaming, have any experience in managing a gaming community of sorts. And it can be any kind, because like as we said, there are many types. I mean, there are gaming communities on mobile devices, to PC, to tabletop, and they all kind of have their own nuances. So for example, I was an officer in a Guild Wars 2 guild that focused mostly on world versus world. So it was very specific and it had many eye-opening experiences, you could say, on what it takes to keep a guild running, not into the ground.
Yeah.
So that's probably what I will be taking most of my additional comments. Go ahead and...
Okay. Did any of you guys played Aeon?
Yeah.
No? Oh, you played it?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I
Okay,
didn't play
cool.
it for long.
All right, so Aeon was an MMO that I was dove and addicted to for like 4 years. And what that taught me is that a healthy gaming community is not something that just happens organically. You have to create it. The natural state of a gaming community is trolling and flaming and chaos. So there's a few things that you can do to create a good environment, but the first thing you have to kind of internalize is it will not happen on its own. You have to make it happen. And the first thing that you may have control over, are any of you guys game developers? Okay, good. Okay, here's the part that you guys can control, because Aeon taught me a number of things, is that gamers are very, very simple. Gamers follow carrot and stick psychology, okay? What that means is gamers will always follow the carrots and they will always avoid the sticks. Now, a lot of times, developers make a game that rewards bad behavior. Anyone play Overwatch? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
a little bit.
What's wrong with the SR system?
I haven't played enough to
Okay,
really know, but
I'll bring over
SR?
the rating system.
but basically,
in competitive play. The developers want people in Overwatch to flex. That means they want them to get good at a number of different heroes and swap on the fly during the match. The thing is, the game does not reward that. The game rewards you spending all your time getting very, very good at one hero and one hero only, what's called one-tricking. So we have this constant conflict in Overwatch between the developers saying, please, please, please learn other heroes so that you can flex, and the game rewarding only the one-tricking. There's a disconnect here between the carrot and stick. What the developers want the players to do is not reinforced by the game design. The game must be designed to reinforce the kind of behavior you want, because no matter how many emphatic posts you make on the forums, the players will always follow the carrot and stick. So that'd be my first piece of advice. If you want whatever behavior you want, you have to hardwire that into the game design. Okay, so if the person gets 20 XP for killing a monster, but if I party up with someone and now we each only get 10 XP, you have now made it so that I will not want to party up with him. But if you make it so that when I party up with him and kill a monster, we both get 20 XP, now I am incentivized to party up.
The only time that's not going to work is if it's a little sister, which you will not kill, even though you get more Adam.
But the point is, you have to be realistic. The players will do whatever they're like electricity. They will always follow the path of least resistance. So if your game is encouraging good behavior, that is a great first step to having a good community. And if it encourages bad behavior, heaven help you.
Well, I mean, like, this is an actually really important note. Fortnite doesn't allow, like, text communication between enemies in the game, and I think that that's what saves it from being an utter salt fest.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Why would you allow them
Could
to
you
talk?
imagine
That would be a
how
dumpster fire.
foul and filthy Fortnite would be if you could do any words at all. Like, I mean, all you can do is dance on people. So, yeah. They don't have a chat function in game. Like, you can't in League, you can yell at your enemies the entire time if you feel like it. So
It's so bad.
yeah.
And if you allow them to troll each other, they will. They will. They absolutely will. So don't make it impossible.
Let's move on to our other friends down here.
Well, it's funny because speaking of being able to troll each other, a lot of the games I've played, especially when you do just, kind of brief, concise matches, as opposed to like an MMO where you often get into some kind of guild or alliance or group, the very person that you were shooting at last game, you may end up on that same on the same team with that person the very next game. I've literally had that happen to me repeatedly. And so if you...
It's a bit awkward, isn't it?
Well, not if you're nice to them.
Oh, there you go.
So, I was actually talking with this gentleman over here earlier about, you're exactly right, you have to create a game community. It does not happen organically. And as we were having a good discussion out there earlier, and I found that in a lot of ways, birds of a feather do kind of flock together. I have had people randomly approach me when I have showed like good sportsmanship or maybe called someone out on bad behavior or things like that. And I'll get flamed in return a lot of times. But I've had people randomly, all of a sudden I'll get like a friend invite. And the comment will be something like, oh, I thought that was really cool, or you play well, or something like that. And I think it starts with, if you're going to make a good gaming community, if you're going to make a welcoming one, you've got to be someone who is an integral part of that. You've got to be a welcoming person yourself. And then that will naturally gravitate to people. Trolls, they may band together to bash people and to attack them, but the crazy thing about trolling is generally when people are doing that, there's not likely going to be the same level of cohesiveness amongst the group. They might all decide, this person's our target, let's all kick them when they're down, but once that's done, they're not going to be like, oh, let's high five and let's go do something else and have fun. But if you get a bunch of people that are playing well and good sports, they're more likely to say, hey, I like working with you, you will cooperate with me, and again, it's a carrot and the stick. If you give people that carrot of I am a fair player, I am a cooperative player, I am a polite, player with professionalism, people are going to say, hey, I like that because I can actually trust you to have my back when something's down, and you're not going to just, TK me or steal my kill or whatever. So it starts with you.
Be the change you want to see.
Exactly. And I didn't even have to look like Gandhi to be this. So yeah.
Sorry.
If
I'm
you
just
want- if you'd
gonna
like to add something.
steamroll everybody.
No, that's fine.
So I think also finding a welcoming community within an unwelcoming community, maybe. Like, I played WoW for a long time, and I didn't have a ton of attachment to it, mostly because I didn't really have like a guild that I identified with, and there's a lot of trolls on there. And I play Guild Wars 2 now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such a welcoming community. But I don't know that it's necessarily that the game community itself is nicer. I think it's because I found a guild that they're like, okay, we have these set rules. If you break one, then you're out of the guild. Like they don't want mean people in the guild.
And Guild Wars is a very,
I was going to say,
for like 5 years
is it just me? But
yeah, it is a very welcoming
It seems a
community,
lot
and
nicer.
I think it has to do a lot with what Aaron said, and that some of that comes from the development side. Everybody receives their own loot.
Yeah.
So you're not like,
if you team up with
quarreling
people,
over
it's
loot.
not like, okay, we're going to split the loot. Like, no, everybody
you
gets
get your
their
own
own thing.
experience, you get your own loot.
Yeah.
So there's never that like
That tension.
and everything that you can receive, like the best gear that you can get, is all from crafting.
Yeah.
And so everybody has a fair chance to receive
It's not like,
that
oh, you don't do
stuff.
PvP,
And
so
in
you
WoW,
can't have that.
yeah, like in WoW, it's really hard because if you don't get into those top raids, like, you cannot get the best gear, and you're always like slightly limited.
Yeah.
Which is why I had to stop playing WoW, because
Yeah.
I had children.
And some of us have too much
And
social
like, I
anxiety to
couldn't
be
do
in
like
those
6-hour raids for some reason.
You don't want to be like that mom in the guild.
In the
where she's,
guild.
like got her kids.
In
Yeah,
the car,
yeah,
and,
She's
like,
neglecting them the
they're like
entire
chewing on
show.
plugs and stuff,
Oh.
and she's like, they're
Guild Wars
I
fine.
can't watch that. I know
Guild
too
does
many
provide
people
that on
like
a development side, but I think that it does. You got to have that structure too within your guild, and it's not going to come completely natural.
Yeah.
Things do fall apart.
Well,
so.
if I can riff off that a little bit, my wife and I played WoW, and I stopped largely just I had my own reasons, and I wasn't into the grinding at the time. But my wife did have time, and we do have kids, and she was able to manage WoW and the kids, and we knew that when raid night came around, it was raid night, and I was there to help out. But it was interesting because she and her little sister got into WoW, and they did happen to find a good guild, did have that structure, and did actually cooperate. And because they had that, it was interesting because their personalities, both my wife and her sister, are very, very friendly, very welcoming, and they kind of became the guild moms in a way where people actually turn to them with their real life problems. And I think when you get to a point where people are coming to you with actual issues and not just like, oh, I can't beat this one boss, can I get you to team with me? It's crazy because we had people literally fly from across the country to meet them. And then when they went to BlizzCon in 2008, it was like they were the center of attention because they were just so nice.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have happened in a less structured guild, I imagine. But the thing is they both were able to find those communities in WoW that actually made WoW enjoyable for them. And it did end up being a very large emotional burden because she starts taking all these other people. They're like dealing with like, I've got this psychological problem. Can you help me with it? It's like and
She was a real therapist.
Yeah, well, and she was, and she really was, and she actually helped several people through depression, and she helped.
That's awesome.
And so, but that was it. They were giving and giving and giving, and the other community members in turn were also doing the same.
Speaking
and they did it
of finding that great group of people, tabletop. How do you do that in tabletop?
Oh yeah,
Because
that seems like it'd be a lot.
let me
harder.
tell you, I have been through my fair share of attempts to start a group and keep a group, and for many various reasons, it always falls apart about 3 or 4 games in. Like, do you have any advice
D&D has that problem too.
on how to find that group that
Yeah, I have a lot of
comes
advice about
back?
that. Tons of advice about that. Just before I go like really crazy on tabletop stuff, how many people in this room play tabletop games? Okay, good. So there's a few of you. So it's appropriate. Good. Excellent.
It's okay. I don't think
So I'm involved
We're
in
in your territory now.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Yeah, I can talk. No, I can talk about video games too, but this is is something I'm
I
a
think
little
they're
more
both
passionate
really
about.
important and
Yeah,
have commonalities.
Well, I mean, the human dynamic
Yeah.
doesn't change as
Yeah.
long as people are involved. Similar
And
mechanisms
we're
will be
all
there.
awkward nerds
Oh,
on both
yeah.
sides.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
not like I
Yes, we
have
are.
trouble like
The
that.
thing is,
I am the awkwardest nerd in the world, trust me.
So.
That's true.
So I guess there's a few things, right? I mean, there are some different ways you can start at your friendly local game store, right? That's one thing that you can do. There are some options there where there's organized play, tabletop games. Like there are always going to be Magic tournaments. If you want to get into Magic, that is a difficult community to get into because there are some really. I mean, I say, yeah, I'm a huge nerd, but man, I mean,
It's like
There's some people who take it to a quantum
it's like
really
being
do.
into
They really
Star
do.
Wars versus being into Doctor
So-
Who. It's like
yeah.
Like down
And I
the
love
rabbit
Magic.
hole.
I don't no disrespect to Magic at all, right? It's a really fun game, and I've played it plenty. But the community can be rough, and so I think that's one place you can start. But one of the places I found that worked really well for me is either at school or at the workplace, right? And so my day job, I manage programmers at Health Equity, and we have
That's
an
a fertile field.
unbelievable,
Yeah.
we have an unbelievable community. We have a board game group, we have a Magic group, and we have a RPG group, and each of them have 20, 30, 40 members, and we get together to do different types of
Wow,
games
that's
all the time.
Right.
And one of the cool things about that is because it's kind of company sponsored, they actually give some money, and so you could get loot for playing
This job.
in the game.
Everybody apply right
Yeah.
now.
Dude,
So it's pretty good, right? Like
Yeah.
when they kicked off the RPG group, they were like, "Hey, we want to kick off an RPG group." And so a few of us got together and said, "Well, how do we get people interested in this? Let's give everybody a D&D beginner box." So we gave everybody a D&D beginner box that wanted to get into it, right?
Is this a
I want to work
building?
where you work.
It's not.
Okay.
It's
I've heard of the building. They
yeah.
have a game room.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we have game rooms throughout the building. I work at Health Equity just
That
for
is so
that's my day job.
Nice.
But you can also do great online groups for tabletop games, right?
Tabletop Simulator. I have used.
Yeah, that's a great option. I mean, Discord is just fine for tabletop game communities, right? It works for both. We have a group called Utah Role Playing Gamers. Did I get it right, Natasha? Hopefully I got it right. Utah Role Playing Gamers. Is that right? On Discord. And there's about 30 people maybe in there that just look. They post when they're looking for a game. They post that they want to run a game. That it's nice. But you do need to have, I think, in any of those scenarios, just like I said before, you've got to have the rules, right? You have to have enough there so that you can say if someone is being, trolling, or if they're being a jerk or whatever, you can say, hey, please don't do that, or we can't support you being in the group, right? And being able to say that is very important, and you have to do it.
And that's why rules are nice too, because you can, not that you can hide behind them, but it's like the same thing at a workplace where you're like, oh, so this is the policy. It's not like I personally have something against you.
Right.
Like if you establish rules and then they break a rule, it's not like, oh, my opinion is that you need to be kicked out. It's like, oh, you broke a rule, it's written right here, now you have to go.
I'm sorry, if you want to live in Colombia, you can't just be killing people with skyhooks.
Why not? Come on. I know they really frown on that. I was really surprised. Whatever.
All right. So, in theory, you've found the community, and it's going great. I have, through experience, discovered that it doesn't always continue on the great path. When something happens to kind of disrupt your awesome community as a leader, how do you step in and try to get everything back on course?
All right, so I have my little theory here. This is my gamer distribution matrix. Ready for it?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, about 60% of gamers are good people. That's as high as it goes. It's not 80, it's not 90, it's about 60. Okay? These are the people who you can count on to be kind to one another, to be helpful, to be respectful.
These are the people who showed up here because they care about
Right.
that.
Then you're going to have about 30% that are the turncoats. Okay? These are the people that will only be as good as you allow them to be. So if you enforce your rules and if you have no tolerance towards certain behaviors, they will follow those rules because it's in their best interest. They're kind of sociopaths. In that sense. But if you are lax on the rules and if you are permissive
They will
about
take what they
behaviors,
can get.
they will take advantage of it. And then you're going to have about 10% that are just the monsters. They're the people who want nothing more than to destroy other people's happiness, and that is where they get their joy. And here's the hard part. Here's where it factors into your question. The hard part about being in charge of community, you need to understand that 10% are never going to change. People in that category, you'll try to be patient with them, you'll try to give them extra chances, and it won't help. They will never change. The only thing you can do is isolate them.
And the thing is, if you try to help them change, they will likely bring you down.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've had whole guilds.
They are pleased about it.
Yeah, I've had whole guilds implode around me because they were trying to give that person another chance.
In World vs. World, in Guild Wars, that were blacklisted as monsters, basically. One of them on our server was Ajax Blue.
Okay.
And everybody knew that, like, you just do not listen to this guy because his entire goal was to bring down the community. Like, that was absolutely 100%.
Like, that's the game
and
he was playing, not Guild Wars 2.
Like, he would brag about it. Like, it was absolutely...
That's the game he was there.
Yeah.
Got blood in the Tumblr.
Yeah.
There's a call out post search.
Ajax Blue?
Yeah.
Heard it? Yeah.
I don't even play the game.
Oh my god! He literally goes into and
It's like a modern Billy the Kid.
Like his goal in life is to destroy gaming communities. Like
That's like the most sad,
He's
miserable
nuts.
goal.
Oh, it is. Because there are some very broken people out there.
yeah.
And it's not our job to fix them. It's our job to make sure the guilds.
It's your job
has
to
fun,
block them
right?
and
so you
and ostracize them.
Those
from
kind
the
of people,
community,
you can't
unfortunately.
fix them. You just have to get rid of them, put them off in their own sandbox.
Don't
to
let the poison
troll
spread.
each other.
Because they do.
You have to be the bad guy.
They do get their enjoyment off of causing drama
They do.
and breaking things apart. And
Yeah.
so the more attention you give them, the more they're going to do that.
And one of the things that game designers can do that's I think is brilliant, you can't ban these people, they just make new accounts. They come with them. But what you can do that some games do that's brilliant, they have special dedicated servers where they will put those people and just let them play each other. So just it's seriously like let's throw them down into outer darkness and let them troll each other.
It's like Hunger Games with trolls.
It is.
It's the trolliest of them all.
So game designers, if having a special server just for those people and sending them off to be there is a great solution.
I love that.
There's another thing that one of
I'm gonna write a book about that.
Right, I know, I'm already like thinking.
What about Keeley?
Oh yeah. I have enough, let me tell you.
With that graph, what percentage of that 60% are actually going to actively help you maintain the peace?
5%.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Most people, when a conflict arises, are going to keep their heads down.
Yeah.
They're going to ride it out. They're going to wait
They're
it
just
out.
there to have fun. That's the ultimate thing you need to remember when you're running a community. Everybody wants to have fun.
Yeah.
Like, if you start turning a game into a job, like, honestly, that's why I left my Guild Wars 2 guild. Because a new leader took over, and he was so into wanting us to do, like, guild versus guild battles. We gotta practice, and we gotta be here at this time, and we're gonna practice for these many hours, and we gotta be the best, and like
Your
it
coach doing
stopped
scrims
being
with you or
fun.
something.
He wasn't even being mean. It was just it stopped being fun. And a lot of people left the guild not like for any argument's sake, but just because he made it so much fun.
So
much fun.
You can get the same thing in tabletop, 100%, right? Like you can have a game master that's like, you know what? If you haven't read the book, then don't bother showing up. It's like, well, okay.
All right, now no one shows up.
Right, then nobody shows up, right? But you can have.
And then you can complain about non-dedicated gamers.
Right.
Where have all the good players gone?
Yeah.
So, and really, this question about what do you do when someone's basically being a monster, and how do you step in? I mean, this is just standard dealing with people. humans.
Yeah, but we geeks are not good at that.
No.
Well,
That's why we have
actually
games.
awesome.
Why we're
But the
here.
thing
Yeah.
is even I bring that up because like I've in my day job I've been a supervisor and currently a supervisor, and I've had to deal with people who actively try to bring you down. So even and I'm still a geek, and it was kind of hard for me to do that. One of my first supervisory position, I had a relatively small staff, and one of our key players had been in her position for like 15, 16 years. And just had a lot of issues. And I tried working with her. We went through the disciplinary process, which was a real pain in the neck. And it was just 18 months of just constant battle. And it took up so much of my time and my emotional energy. But the thing is as much as I didn't want to do it, because I am absolutely, I hate conflict, I avoid it strenuously. But in this case, there were very real life consequences to this person's lack of performance. For instance, how does a health clinic run out of Band-Aids? That kind of consequence. Yeah, no, I'm not making that up.
You had one job.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know anything, and I mean, like, I would assume Band-Aids are important.
You can walk into a health clinic and find a Band-Aid,
Yeah.
but there were times we ran out. But the point I'm making, and this can apply to tabletop, to online, to any gaming community, is that sometimes, like Aaron was saying, someone has to be the guy in the black hat. And it's painful and it's uncomfortable, and it was very much against my nature. And it's easier to avoid in a gaming situation because you know what? If the guild falls apart, it's like, I remember when we used to have good times, but I'll just go find another community. Because really, gaming, it is one of those things that's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to dominate our lives. But going back to the chat I was discussing earlier, we're in a world these days that is so much more toxic than when I was a child. And the internet has allowed that toxicity to spread. And so we may think that, well, this is just a game. But there are very real instances of people who, because of cyberbullying, etc., have gone on to kill themselves. And so someone in the guild, and really it might just be you have to find someone in the guild that's willing to do it, or the alliance or whatever, needs to say, look, this is not acceptable behavior, and they need to lay down the law. And that might be only 5% of the people, but given the fact that these things do happen, there needs to be a certain line drawn in the sand that if people are crossed, it's like, you are done, you are gone. And then once those toxic elements are removed, that's when you as a group, hopefully, the people who were keeping their heads down but now don't have to, can get together and hopefully say, hey, let's address this problem, let's maybe start a healing process. Because so many people these days connect online. I love tabletop games. I've been doing them for almost 30 years now. That dates me. But so many more games. I mean, it's so much easier to get an online community. But online, tabletop, whatever, we've got real people with real issues, and a lot of times we won't know them. But we need to recognize that even if we don't know them, people still have to suffer with them. So we still need to find ways to bring them back.
And along that same line, just from the female, harassment is a serious thing.
Yeah.
And as a guild officer or leader, sometimes you have to deal with that. And it's so awkward. So we had an instance in our guild, and we'd gotten close enough that we had like a Facebook group, and like some of our guild members who happened to be girls were coming to us and were like, I don't know if these people are real. And she was specifically calling out female accounts, actually, that had really weirdly photoshopped pictures. And so us as guild officers had to investigate this. And let's just say it was this weird old catfish thing that this one guy in the guild had created several female personas that were in our guild, and he created accounts for them because you can have free accounts on Guildverse. And he was communicating with other girls in our guild through the female catfish avatars, but they were all him. And
was he being creepy?
He was being a little creepy.
Okay.
Yeah, a little creepy. And so we just kind of like discovered that this guy had been like sort of like using female personas to get closer to the females in our guild, and it was just a mess, of course. And then once he got figured out, because I'm like, these are all pictures, and like we found the pictures that he was using were like other, like actual people on Facebook.
Cool.
Like he stole their pictures, and we like had to email them and be like, this account is using your picture. Is this you? And they're like, holy crap, it's not me.
Oh no.
Like, I don't even know this person. And all this stuff. It was a mess, okay? And so, you know, you have to listen when, like, people in your community bring this kind of stuff up. Because I was like, I've been talking to these people and these fake girls and this person for like a year and a half. Like, and it was really hard to be like, no, that can't be. They can't all be the same person. And then we're like, but they're never on Discord at the same time. They're never online at the same time. They're never, like, and you start realizing, oh my gosh, like for a year and a half, he's been like fabricating these other identities.
Wow.
And also playing as himself. And it's like this whole messed up drama. And I'm just like,
season 3.
I don't want to be.
I know. Like, it's just a book.
Like, it was really rough.
Actually, that sounds like a great one.
It does sound like a great book.
So, yeah, I had a question.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah.
So,
I don't have a question, but like something, an experience that I had that was something.
make sure to speak up so the others can.
Well, something that like emphasizes like the fact that you have to be the person who steps up and like kicks it out. I used to play a lot more often than I do now, but I used to play Star Wars SWTOR.
The Old Republic.
Yeah, the Old Republic.
Great,
It was it really is. And so I got this invite to a guild. Actually, my mom found the guild. And so she's like, hey, she talked to the leader, and so the leader invited us, and he was the person who was the leader was a really great leader, honestly, and he would be very firm about people who just started trash talking and swearing all over the internet, all over the guild, and he'd be very firm on booting them out. So honestly, if you just like, I agree with like setting rules, because if you like get rid of that, then
Yeah, the best guilds will have a written rule sheet when you apply, and they'll say, this is what we allow, this is what we do not allow, this is our policy if you break these rules. It sounds really boring and pencil pushing, but it helps a lot because you mentioned unspoken agreements. The problem with unspoken agreements is sometimes my assumption about our unspoken agreement is different than your assumption about our unspoken agreement.
And
so when they're written,
anonymity of the internet.
yes. So when
In
so
person, you kind of have a little bit more, but not.
yeah, there's lots of different guilds. There's whole role play.
Contract can be very explicit, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Parts.
I'm just saying it is improved by actually codifying.
Talking about it.
Yeah.
There was a really great thread on Reddit r/girlgamer just the other day.
I was like, Reddit, I'm scared already. Sorry.
No, it was about harassment in gaming in general, not just. It was about video games. It was about tabletop. It was about all sorts of things, right? And I feel like Stan made a good comment, and I think we glossed over it a little bit, just where you said we need to work towards finding solutions, right? We need to figure out how do we get to a better place instead of griping about where we are, right? And this thread was really great about that. Like, there were a lot of people chiming in with ideas and things that we could do to address the problems that exist, right?
Well, and something I really like also about what you said was that, like, I am not a confrontational person. I mean, unless I'm killing people in Bioshock. But like in general, I am not a confrontational person, and it takes a lot for me to stand up and be like, hey, you need to stop doing this. So I feel like thinking about the real world repercussions, like, this stuff has led to suicides. Thinking about it that way is almost like, okay, now it's not just, oh, I'm out of my comfort zone. It's like, okay, I need to get out of my comfort zone to make sure these things don't happen. So, like, realizing the stakes, I think, is really helpful.
I think in any successful guild, you're going to have 3 to 4 key, in a guild of about 50, you're going to have 3 to 4 key people that make it a good guild. Right, the ones that are willing to be the bad guy and kick out the people that are always going to be toxic, that are willing to do the boring stuff like write out the rules. They're willing to do go, and everyone else just kind of goes along with this good guild. But there's really a few, in a good guild, there'll be a few key people who make it a good guild. Here's the thing, you guys can be those people.
Yeah. Or you can be supportive of those people.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times those people do not get the thanks
Yeah.
and appreciation that they deserve, and then they burn out and then they quit.
Yeah.
Because they're so tired of having to be the parent and they want to have fun in the game for once.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
When that does happen, when being, I recently was in a situation, it wasn't in a game, it was on Tumblr, where I stood up to someone who was trash talking,
Yeah.
and a couple days later, I gained a follower for it. I was like, I gained a follower out of nowhere. I'm like, I don't remember posting anything recently that should have gotten me a follower, so I just messaged him. It's like, hey, what about my blog drew you in? I'm trying to grow my blog. What am I doing right? And they said, you stood up to a blog that I absolutely despise. I have never felt so validated. Okay? And that happened on a day when I was I brought this up and to use your phrase, I was ready to tank. I was in a really good place that day, and for whatever reason, no matter what that troll threw at me, it would not stick. That doesn't happen very often. And so when you see someone standing up, let them know that you think that's cool, and they'll be able to do it more often. Because it helps recharge the batteries.
Well, especially as us, like, introverted gamers, we could stand up for ourselves or stand up for somebody else, and then the whole time after that, we're like, oh crap, was that wrong? Should I not have done that? Like, maybe I stepped out of line, or at least that's how I am. Like, I'll say something like, oh
And
no,
I was
so
that
yeah.
person who often went to bat in World versus World, and I got pretty known on my server. Everyone knew I was a girl, so you get more crap. But I would be like, look, that language is not appropriate, especially when, because in competitive games, people like to use the word rape, and I hate that so much. And I would go to bat on that every single time, and people knew, and, every time I said something, like, the dude would be a jerk, but I would get, 5 whispers saying, thank you, I hate that. And those people were the people that kept me going. And eventually, if you have enough of those who keep speaking up, people stop being stupid because they know they're going to get called out on it, and they know that it's not acceptable in the community, and they'll stop doing it. And you have to take some crap for it at first, but if you keep repeating it, more people have the courage to join in, and you can turn it around. It's not a fun process, but you can do it.
But it's a necessary
But
process.
it's also like consistency.
Yes.
Which is definitely part of that.
So, you can change it.
Yeah, so if you don't have the bravery to be the person that stands up, which is like me 90% of the time, because I can't
Yeah.
do it,
At
then
least listen
support
to the person
them.
that
Yes,
say
let them
thanks for
know.
standing up so they know that somebody agrees with them, and it's not just trolls.
Yeah.
All right, so with that lovely message, let's open up for some of your questions. You had your hand up first. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to be giving away one of these at everyone off mic.
Shoot,
I have like 5 more. Okay, so
so-
first up, I want to hear from each of you. Thanks. First up, I want to hear from each of you. What got you started writing, except for you, I know you. I don't want to hear from
They
you.
don't know me.
You can say that too. And then, sick enough. I was going to ask, can I have that book?
You're welcome.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. And then I'll ask you for a solution. Anyways, yeah, I just want to hear what got you started writing.
Okay.
Starting with you.
Oh,
Start with
jeez,
you.
okay.
Start this way.
Yeah.
Let's
Go
go
that way.
Maybe, in all of the panels I've had today, I felt like kind of a failure as an author because every example I bring up is video games, but then someone came up to me after and was like, no, you need to be like our champion. Like, video games have amazing stories. Like, they have these incredible, like, intricate storylines and dialogue and all this great stuff. I'm like, you know what? Yes, that is true.
Matter.
They do matter. And I've been a gamer since I could hold a controller, but I I don't know anything about developing games, and I don't know anything about, like creating my own, and so being a writer was kind of my way of doing that. I was like, I don't know, I thought of all of these stories that I would have loved if they were games, but since I don't have that ability, I decided to write them into books instead.
My journey was a little more convoluted and longer. When I was 5, my mom told me that I was going to be entered into a local library writing contest. I did a cute little crayon book about me and a ranch dog, and somehow won the. Well, no, it was a real dog. It was based on a story.
I
It
love
made friends
that
with the
though.
dog.
That's so cute.
Yeah, and it won, and it got put in the library, and I didn't think much of it until like my senior year of high school, when I was going through all the great teen angst of does she like me, does she not, and so writing became a great cathartic outlet. Yes, and there were tears, and it became a great cathartic outlet for me to kind of sort through my emotions as I was dealing with just teen romance. And then fast forward into college, I got into that game that I mentioned earlier, and it really did have a pretty solid fan base that was creative. It was a relatively small portion, but I ended up encountering my writing and art mentor online, who ripped me to shreds a lot. But the thing is we created some really cool stuff, and because we kind of got on the ground floor, we actually, the two of us, were largely responsible for developing significant portions of this gaming world. And we got to the point where the admins were bringing ideas to us and stuff like that, and I thought this was really cool. And then a few years after that, after I'd been writing fanfic for a number of years, I was commuting to and from work, and I would just listen to audiobooks. And I know I'm dragging this out, but the point is I realized, and this is not to toot my own horn, but I realized that some of these books that were published and selling, I realized I could have written that book. And after that went on for a while, I said, well then, why am I not published? Why am I not writing these books and putting them out there? And back in 2012, I was fortunate enough to find a publisher and actually start getting published. And it's just kind of gone on from there, and I'm trying to grow that and progress. But yeah, it was a process.
Cool. So I got into writing because I love stories. Just plain and simple, right? I'm glad you said game writing matters, because
It's
like
so
I'm
beautiful.
so like, all of you have novels and I don't have like like I have some unfinished novels, but yeah, I got into game writing because I love RPGs. I do. I just love RPGs,
So much
right?
fun.
I've loved them since the very first time one was set down in front of me when I was 11 years old, and I was just fascinated, right? And I thought, oh, it's amazing. A whole world and everybody sitting around the table here creates it together, and right? And so, yeah, I mean, that's why I got into writing games. I mean, I tried my hand at writing a lot of other stuff, and sort of like Stan, I think. I mean, I spent a lot of years as a computer programmer, and so I thought, well, that's pretty complicated. Maybe I can write a book.
But see, like,
It's not the same.
it's
right?
not like your writing
Yeah.
is less valid because it's not a book. It's still writing, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, that's
I
bad.
failed to do this.
Oh,
I know. That's yeah.
But I actually didn't.
We technically have 1 minute, so.
I don't know the
I'll be
context.
quick then. I actually didn't intend to be a writer. I was going to be an airline pilot. I write very specific kind of heroes. I like writing heroes with good hearts and that do the right thing for the right reason. And it's because my son died. And so all of my heroes in my books are him. And this is my way of giving him the adventures that he needed.
I feel really bad.
Sorry, that's her fault.
Sorry.
Well, weirdly enough, like my story is quite similar to yours. I wrote a book when I was 5. And it won a library contest. It's in the Alameda County Library, California, still to this day. It was called Oh Brother. It was about a girl whose brother puts sneezing powder in her bed, and then she sneezes her covers off, and she sneezes the door down, and she sneezes her dad through the roof, and I was a brilliant 5-year-old.
You were a brilliant 5-year-old.
That is a great.
I illustrated the whole thing, and I was like, high on an award. I was like, I'm gonna be famous. I just knew it. I knew I was gonna be a famous writer. My dad's like, calm down.
Can I just say that my
We're
first book that I wrote in 4th grade was called Scared to Death, but I abbreviated it and said STD, now you can't hide. So
Whoa!
I think your story's a little bit better than mine. I still have it. It's got a picture of a girl screaming, and it has like the worst description on the back. Like, do you ever wonder why you don't wake up in your bed at night?
Oh my god.
Yeah, like that legitimately happened. So there you go.
Shannon, you're my favorite.
So this cheesy one is best.
Now I know why all the awkward stuff just came out of me in that moment.
Right? My romance for
So
preschool.
yeah, I started young. I had lots of doubts along the way. My next foray into writing was, well, I didn't think about it at the time as being Sailor Moon fan fiction, but it was definitely Sailor Moon fan fiction, me just changing all the names and like writing my own. But that was my next one, and then during my tween years, PlayStation came out and Final Fantasy VII happened, and I played every Final Fantasy I could get my hands on. And like you said, gaming and those games in particular built something in me, and all of my stories really, I mean, I wanted to write RPGs when I was younger.
Yeah.
I had no idea how to do that, so I just wrote books.
Yeah.
Gotta start somewhere.
And yeah, I mean, I still play RPGs today. I play MMOs and I write books back and forth about the gaming stuff. So yeah, don't give up on your dreams, guys.
Be the good people in the guild.
Thanks
Be the
for
ones that you don't want to kick out of the guild.